Welcome to back to content swap.
What?
Let's
try that again.
Welcome back to content swap.
You said welcome to back into content swap.
They don't need to know that. We were listening to old episodes today, and you introduced the episode that way a while back, and I thought I would give it a shot.
I don't recall that.
Well, anyway, welcome back to the Content Swap podcast. You are joined by Parker and
Aaliyah and Mr. Bun.
Mr. Bun is here. That is
my hamburger.
a stuffed animal hamburger. If you are new to our podcast, then well, welcome. We're happy that you're here for the first time. This is a podcast in which we assign each other a piece of content, engage with it for the week, and then we reconvene on the podcast. We talk about our thoughts, we talk about our feelings, we share some interesting facts on the making of, and sometimes we ask questions and just kind of get into it. And yeah, that's the podcast. So before we dive into the content, we like to give our news life update first. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Take us away. What has been new with you in the past week?
Yeah, well, we are currently in California. We will be here for a month, pretty much, almost a month. And I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the sunshine. It never rains. We've had a rainy season where we live, so it's been nice to get out of that. The weather is beautiful. Overall, I'm just a happy girl. And we have the puppies, and they're so sweet.
Yes, we are watching puppies. That is why we are in California.
Yeah.
Good reason to come to California.
Yeah. But in terms of content, so since we've been here, I am working East Coast hours. So I finish my day really early. My work day really early here. Which gives me time to do whatever. And so I started watching How I Met Your Mother, which I've never seen this show. I've seen pieces of this show out of context. So in that when I was seeing it out of context, I was like, I don't understand. I don't want to watch this show. But now that I started it from the beginning, it's got me hooked. And so it's such a good
I used to watch it all the time.
Yeah, it's such a good just throw on. I'll do it maybe while I'm working or after work, while I'm waiting for you to kind of get off work and us to do something together. So it's been really nice to just watch that. I think I'm on season 2, beginning of season 2. Yep. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I watched it a lot in high school and early college years. Yeah. And that was around when it finished. And I never really went back to it. I never really went and watched old episodes again after that. I kind of was just done with it. And then I would think about it and I would be like, yeah, I don't know. I'm not really interested in that kind of humor. Or, I don't need to go back to that. I feel like I'm good. But then you watching it and watching from the first season, and I'm like, oh man, I've seen every episode of the first season. And these are so many iconic episodes just in the first season. It kind of made me realize okay, the show is better than my memory of it is. I think maybe, it does kind of lose itself in the last season, but that's every show. But yeah, no, I'm glad you chose to do this because it's revisiting an old part of myself.
Yeah, I really enjoy Marshall. I think Jason Segel is just super fun. I just love Jason Segel in general.
That was the whole reason I watched the show to begin with.
Yeah, and I really love him, and I love him in the show. Some of the other characters are kind of wild, and I'm just what? Who acts like this?
Yeah, it feels like a blessing to get so much Jason Segel content.
Yeah,
that's kind of what drew me to the show after being such a big fan of Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Yeah.
And
he's so relatable in this show because he's a student. And I'm like, ooh, I feel you. So yeah, anyway, started watching that. In terms of games, I've been trying to go, I did bring my Switch with me to try and finish games that I started. So I did finish Botany Manor yesterday.
Oh, you did?
I did, yeah.
Congratulations.
I just had 2 more puzzles to finish, got those done. And yeah, and then the game was over. And I was kind of sad about it. I don't know. I enjoyed savoring that game. I would love a few more puzzles because I didn't realize I was at the end of it. And then the game was over and I was like, oh, that's it. So yeah, a friend of ours gave me a recommendation of something kind of similar to Botany Manor. I forget the name of it, so I'll probably have to ask them about it. But Yeah, looking for
which friend?
This is Carolyn.
Yep, no idea what she recommended.
Yeah, I forget what she said. I like somewhat remember the name, so I'll just have to Google it. But yeah, so next to finish is Princess Peach.
Oh, you haven't finished that yet?
No, I haven't finished it.
Oh.
I know I'm at the end of that game.
I finished it like a month ago.
Yeah, I'm at the end of it. I don't have that much left, so I need to finish that. And then you gave me a game for Christmas, Life is Strange, and I started it, and I'm barely into the game, so like I need to play more of that. I don't know if I'll get to that while we're here.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
cool.
I think that's pretty much it for me.
Yeah, mostly a lot of How I Met Your Mother coming from you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so for me, what's been new is not a whole lot, honestly. We had the week, we've been working, so it's just been kind of busy. We've been looking after dogs, going on, a lot of walks and things like that. Mm-hmm. So I haven't devoted a ton of time to content. I'm still playing Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. I just finished the 4th chapter in Twilight Town, which was really good. Much better than I remember, honestly. That's a great chapter. So heading into chapter 5 in Keelhaul Key. So looking forward to that. Aside from that, I did we played video games a good amount yesterday, and I briefly last night decided I was going to start playing Hollow Knight because first off, Hollow Knight is like considered one of the best games to come out, like especially as an indie game to come out in the last 6 years. And I never played it before, and I always get the music recommended to me, so it had been on my list as something to play for such a long time, and I kind of pulled the trigger because I saw it was only $15, and I bought it, and I decided I was going to briefly start it, and I haven't really done a whole lot with it, but part of the reason why I also wanted to kind of get just a brief taste of it is because there's an Xbox showcase that happened this morning that we haven't actually watched yet that I want to watch. But it's strongly rumored that Hollow Knight Silk Song might, get some kind of trailer at this thing. Granted, every time there's a showcase for anything, there's a rumor that Hollow Knight Silk Song is going to be there. So, but it really feels like, hey, maybe it's actually going to be there. So it's been 9.5 hours since that aired, and I haven't watched it yet. So I'm I still don't know. But yeah, I wanted to get a taste of that. Just in case there was a new trailer for that. Yeah, so I really want to play that game. So I will plan to finish it. I know it's a Metroidvania, so that's just I've been playing a lot of Metroidvania, so actually I'm not sure if it's maybe the right game for me right now, but we'll see. It's definitely something that I will play and finish all the way through at some point. Yeah, I played Prince of Persia this year. I played Animal Well this year, so we'll see. Aside from that, I did start this morning watching the Ahsoka show. So this Star Wars The Acolyte show is the big Star Wars thing right now, and I want to watch that, but I realized when watching The Mandalorian Season 3, I had kind of briefly started Mandalorian Season 3 when it first came out, and then put it on pause, and then came back to it when all of it was out, and I just binged it. And I found that consuming Star Wars content for me is a lot more enjoyable when I can just do it in one sitting, because my enjoyment of Star Wars is not kind of a constant, continuous thing. It's I got to be in the mood for Star Wars. So the idea of waiting a week for the next bit, I'm almost kind of every single time one of these shows comes out, by the time it's the last episode, I'm kind of already over, that wave of enjoying Star Wars by then. So I'm trying to make it a thing to watch these shows after they're totally out. So the reason I started Ahsoka was because this morning I was I've got a little bit of time. I kind of want to watch The Acolyte. Wait a minute, I should wait for all of it to be out. But wait a minute, I haven't even watched Ahsoka yet. So I went back to it. I watched a recap video of everything I needed to know going into Ahsoka, so it all made sense because I didn't watch the Clone Wars, I didn't watch Rebels. And I started it, I watched the first 2 episodes, and I gotta say, so far, I'm really enjoying it. It really kind of feels hey, this is what the next generation of Star Wars is supposed to feel like. Not like this crappy Obi-Wan Kenobi show, because I really didn't like that show. It's really, it feels like, hey, it's not trying to just grip us with something old like Obi-Wan Kenobi, like bringing back Ewan McGregor, which is like a show that just was kind of unnecessary. It's giving us something new. It's giving us something like that's just a different part of Star Wars, and that for me was pretty like easy to consume. Pretty like it really kind of made me feel like, hey, I don't really know anything about this or what's going to happen, and that to me is interesting, and so I like that feeling. So yeah, future thoughts on Ahsoka to come. Aside from that, the big thing that we did this weekend was kind of rather impromptu, because we are in Southern California right now. Summer Game Fest, there's no S, not Summer Games Fest. Summer Game Fest happened on Friday, and my coworker who lives in LA, when I was meeting with him on Wednesday, he said, yeah, actually, like, spur of the moment thing, I'm going to go to Summer Game Fest. And then it just kind of became, hey, we're down here, let's go to Summer Game Fest too. It was $41 tickets, and we went to the YouTube Theater in Inglewood, and we watched Jeff Keighley dish out the announcements of the next 6 months of games, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, it was. I have always wanted to go to some kind of event like that. Like for years, I wanted to go to E3. Like as a kid, that was like the thing I wanted to do. But I lived in Northern California, not Southern California, so it would have been a bit more of a to-do to get down to E3. And for years, E3 was like a press-only event. So for this to just kind of be like, hey, there's a presentation happening at this big theater, and Jeff Keighley, the guy who's just in charge of video games, is going to give a presentation, and it's just going to be 2 hours of here are the new trailers for things that you should be excited about. So yeah, that was just like a really cool, different experience. And going into it, I was kind of thinking like, well, I've listened to a lot of podcasts, or I just kind of like know people. Like I know the names of people and the faces of people that work for these different companies. I read a lot of books about the making of video games. Maybe I'll bump into some industry people. Maybe I'll be able to like rub elbows or not, or, schmooze a little bit and be like, hey, big fan of your work. That didn't really end up happening. However, I did spot a man named Paul Gale, who I was super excited to meet. Paul Gale, shouts out to Paul Gale. He was super friendly, and
he's such a sweet person.
Yes,
so nice.
He had no idea who I was, and I was like, I follow you on Twitter and Instagram, and I know him because of a podcast that I listen to called the Kit and Krista podcast, which is two former Nintendo employees who talk a lot about Nintendo and the current state of the industry, and through a very like Nintendo specific lens. And they always do a Q&A, and I used to submit a lot of questions to their Q&A, and there was always this guy named Paul Gale who would also post a lot of questions, and he always had really good questions, and he just kind of seemed like a Nintendo super fan that knew a lot of stuff. And I remember I was on their Discord server, and Paul Gale and I actually interacted a few times on the Discord server. He probably doesn't remember me, but he was always just kind of this person in that community that stood out, especially when Kit and Krista would tell stories about times at Nintendo where they would have E3 and then they would run all their events, and it was a big stressful time, and then they would kind of have like their post-mortem meeting to kind of talk about like, or just to kind of like check in for the day of like, hey, how did today go? What do we need to do for tomorrow? And they told this story about how like Paul Gale would just kind of like be at those meetings, and there was like Nintendo had their own kind of like internal memo or file on Paul Gale of like, hey, this guy like might find himself in our meetings, so we got to make sure like nobody's there. And I just thought, when I heard that story, I was like, that is awesome. Great. And I spotted Paul Gale, and I was like, oh my God, I know who that guy is. And he's not like a huge name. He's just a really big fan who goes to a lot of these events. He like went to the Super Mario Brothers red carpet event. He like took a video with Chris Pratt. He took a picture with Doug Bowser, the CEO of Nintendo of America. He like knows a lot of people, but not enough people seem to know who he is. So I knew who he was, and I was like, oh my God, I have to go shake hands with Paul Gale. He's like a personal celebrity of mine. So yeah, I got to do that, and he was super sweet. He was super nice. We chatted for a bit. He teaches courses in the kinesiology department at the grad school that we both went to. So we talked about that. And yeah, he was all around just like a great guy, and we took pictures with him. And like that to me was like, oh my God, I got to meet Paul Gale. Like it was just awesome for me, you know? Mm-hmm. And I just, I loved everything about that, and shouts out to Paul for being like such a sweet guy and having just a great conversation.
Yeah, he was wonderful.
Yeah. All right. So with all of that said, anything else we should discuss before diving into this week's content?
No, I just want to add, like, because I attended the event with you.
Oh yeah, what did you think of the event?
I mean, I thought it was a ton of fun. You all know, all the listeners know, I'm not a big video game player. I don't know a lot about video games. I suck at a lot of video games. There's just like so much stuff out there I just don't know. But everything I know is kind of through you, like watching you play games or like telling me about the games and things like that. And so like it was kind of a weird experience me being there, because like I was getting like a sneak peek of like why people love games, or like just seeing people be passionate about games, something I like just, it's not a big appeal to me. And that was like kind of cool, and it was kind of infectious to see like everybody super excited about Terry like being on
Terry Bogard from
Fighter.
Fatal Fury is now coming to Street Fighter 6.
Yeah, like I'm sitting around and everyone's like, they're bringing Terry to Street Fighter, and I'm like, whoa, Terry, I don't even know who that is. And it was just, I don't know, I thought it was fun to be there, just to like just kind of observe everybody, watch everybody, see what everyone was excited about, get the feeling of like what people weren't excited about, like all these people, like I guess not developers, but like people who like create these big games would come onto stage, and like everyone would be super excited, and I'm like, who is this?
Yeah.
Like I don't know who this is.
The like art director and director of Metaphor Refantasio, who worked on Personas 3, 4, and 5 were there, and it was like, whoa.
Yeah, the Alan Wake guy.
Oh, Sam Lake was there.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I was like, oh my God. That was so exciting to me.
And like everyone's hype, and I'm like, okay, I'll be hyped too. Because I'm like, I don't know I've heard of Alan Wake. I don't know who this is. So it's just kind of fun to like see the fandom, you know, like see how people who love games kind of interact with this kind of thing. So I enjoyed it.
I also enjoyed it. Yeah. I would love to go back to something like this again.
I wish that they did the Wholesome Direct like in person.
Yeah, for sure. The Wholesome Direct was on Saturday, and that was kind of like the Cozy Games Direct.
Yeah, and that's like my cup of tea.
Yeah.
And it's like that's where like I follow Cozy Kennedy, and so it's like, oh, I would be excited to go to that, and like, is she there? Like that'd be cool, you know. But yeah, I don't know anybody. I don't know any like of the influential people in like just the broader video game space. So
yeah,
I like when we were having that conversation with Paul. That's his name, right? Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, Paul.
And I think Jeff Keighley walked past us.
I had no idea that Jeff Keighley walked past us, too.
But, like, again, because I don't know who these people are, I was like, why does that guy's face look familiar? Like,
yeah, because he's on my TV every 6 months talking about video games.
I was like, he literally hosted this whole event.
He did. We were in the far back. It was, like, hard to see his face.
Yeah, it was really hard to see his face. But I was like, his face looks kind of familiar. Like, I think that might be the guy. And so then, like, when we, like, got in the car and everything, I was like, hey, I'm pretty sure the, like, host dude just, like, walked past us, and you were like, what?
Yeah. And then Paul posted a picture that he took right after our conversation with Jeff Keighley, and I was like, no. But good for Paul. I'm happy for him.
Yeah. So it's fun. It's fun to like not know people. Like, I don't know, it's fun to be on the other side of a fandom where like you just like, they're a normal person to me, but everyone else is like, but it's this person. And
yeah,
you're like,
yeah.
I don't know. It's always fun to be that, like, on that side of things.
Yeah. We were listening to the Besties podcast the other day, and they made a joke how Jeff Keighley is kind of like the Willy Wonka of video games. Mm-hmm. And yeah, you just let the Willy Wonka of video games walk right past you, and you just had no clue. Yeah.
I had no clue. I was just like trying to get out of the way because it was kind of a tight squeeze in that hallway. So I was like, let me just get out of people's way.
Yeah.
Like, I'll just be in the background chilling.
I was just so sucked into my conversation with Paul that I was like, oh, like, gotta let these people go by. And
yeah.
Jeff.
The only reason I knew is because they were like trying to get by, and I was like, oh, I'm sorry. And I like moved back, and then they walked past. So.
Well.
Yeah.
That'll be a good story.
Jeff would be walking down the street in front of us, and I would not remember.
I would be like, "Oh, it's Jeff Keighley."
I'd be like, "Oh, what?"
It was a great time, and I'm looking forward to watching the Xbox showcase after this. After we finish recording this, and I'm still thinking about Paul. What's his face? Phil Spencer is going to be. He was interviewed by IGN. Earlier this afternoon about kind of the future of Xbox. I really want to listen to that as well to get a good sense for like where his head's at, because Xbox's brand is kind of really hurting right now. So this whole showcase, I'm super interested in knowing more about what happened.
Yeah. Last thing before we move on, shout outs to our friend Ryan for
Ryan's the man,
letting us come along. His dad drove
us.
Shout out to his dad.
Shout out to Ryan's dad, Jeff, because this whole thing happened because Jeff said, hey Ryan, I'm gonna go to the game thing, you want to come with? And he flew down to LA, and then Ryan told me, and I said, hey babe, you want to go to the game thing? And you said yeah. And so, and we went, and Ryan's dad, Jeff, drove us, and it was a blast. It was a blast.
Yeah, thank you to you two.
Yes.
For being awesome and inviting us.
Yes. And then we got to go hang out with Ryan again today at Frankenson Collectible Show in the City of Industry.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was like a place.
Yeah.
City of Industry. I got to buy a rotary engine pin, which is
in my purse. Don't let me forget.
Yeah. I very, very much enjoyed that was a pin that I could buy.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's get into this content.
Let's do it. So what's first?
I think It's Complicated is first.
Great. Because I just wrote a summary on this. And I can just read it. All right. So It's Complicated. If you don't recall, I believe this movie came out in 2009. It was directed by and written by Nancy Meyers, famous for writing works such as When Harry Met Sally, The Intern, and this.
There are other iconic
ones. Other things.
She's like Sleepless in Seattle. Did she do that one?
I think so. Did she do?
Did she do all the Meg Ryan ones? It's You Got Mail or whatever.
She might have. Did she do that Diane Keaton, Jack Nicholson movie? Something's Got to Give.
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So we've established that. All right. So It's Complicated. If you don't remember, it stars Meryl Streep and Alec Baldwin, and their characters live in Santa Barbara, and they used to be married, and they have 3 kids together. So their oldest daughter is getting married to John Krasinski, and their youngest son is graduating from college in New York, and Alec Baldwin has since remarried to a much younger woman played by Lake Bell, who he cheated on Meryl Streep with years ago. But then Lake Bell cheated on him with someone, got pregnant, and then came back to him. So now he has this like new 4th kid he's been raising that's not even his kid. And him and Lake Bell are also trying to have their own kid. Well, his young wife gets sick and can't go with him to his son's graduation in New York. So he goes to New York alone. He and Meryl Streep meet up at the hotel bar. They drink the night away, reminiscing about their old life, and they end up sleeping together. Woo!
Bum, bum, bum.
And Meryl Streep is pretty freaked out by it, as she honestly should be, because this man is a mess. So after this encounter, Alex starts to realize that he is still in love with Meryl Streep, and Meryl is just flat out confused because it took her forever to get over this man after what he did to her, and now she's sleeping with him again. And she's putting an expansion into her home, which is being led by this cute architect played by Steve Martin.
A catch.
He's a total catch in this movie. So after some playful flirting, she and Steve Martin start to build a connection, but meanwhile, her and Alec Baldwin are secretly hooking up. It's all very confusing, and it's not helped by the fact that Alec Baldwin is so insufferable and pushy.
So toxic.
He's like, oh my god, yeah, toxic is the word that I was looking for. Insufferable and pushy is the words that I used, but yeah. He's being so toxic about, like, there's still something between them, don't you see it? And he's showing no signs of actually, like, leaving his wife that he absolutely hates. So it's like pretty icky because he keeps telling Meryl everything she wants to hear to make her feel star-crossed, even though she's just confused by the whole thing and really should be exploring things with Steve Martin. So from there,
and he has such a lack of boundaries. He's like showing up at her house unannounced, like
eating
weaseling his way in. Yeah.
Ugh.
Using the kids to like get to her, basically.
Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh my god, I hated him so much in this movie.
Yeah.
Like, I actually couldn't stand it. I was like, am I supposed to be entertained from watching this movie? Because I just really feel like I want to punch him in the face. But I wouldn't do that. Violence is not the answer. But God, he was just the worst in this movie. So from there's just a good amount of like sleeping together between Meryl and Alec Baldwin, and then going on dates between Meryl and Steve Martin, and John Krasinski finding out about the affair but keeping it to himself. So
and he's struggling.
He's struggling with that fact because like he wants to tell his wife to be, but he knows that like
it'll destroy them,
and they were so heavily impacted by the whole thing. But like you and I were talking about it, of like, if we were in this scenario and I saw that happen, would you want me to tell you? And you were like, yeah, no problem. Like, it's just like the way that these kids are in this movie.
Yeah, the kids are like college and older. So like the oldest is probably in her 30s, and then like there's like a 20 something, like maybe two kind of like 20-ish year olds. And I don't want to judge the way they react because I am not a child of divorce. I don't know like what that experience. I don't know how that impacts you. But the way that they react to everything is very like, feels like a 6-year-old, like the way a 6-year-old would react. Because I was like, okay, if I were to put myself in their shoes, me being the age I am, 27, and you told me that information, I'm not going to be like, devastated. I'm not gonna be like, oh my god, what does this mean? Are you guys getting back together? Like, that's not how I'm gonna react. I'm gonna be like,
that's how they
what are y'all doing?
Yeah.
I'll be like, what are y'all doing? And then whatever like, they say, I'll be like, all right, y'all figure out your own mess. It is what it is.
Years for them to get this figured out.
Right.
As somebody who did have parents that separated, and then got a divorce, like. If this started happening, I'd be like, what? But I wouldn't be like, oh, we all need to go like lay in bed together overnight and talk about our feelings.
They hated them.
Yeah, we're not at that part yet. They do eventually find out about it. I'm gonna get there in a second. But yeah, I mean, granted, in this case, like, given that he cheated on her, that must have been a big thing. So I can understand, like, there was a bigger emotional impact to their experience than, like, the one I had, which was much more, like, you know, civil. But still, I don't know. You've had so long. They're acting like babies about it. Anyway, sorry. That's not the mature way to look at it. But it really just kind of felt like, adults act like that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That felt a little off.
That felt off to me. Yeah. So... the whole okay, where I was at in the story, they didn't find out about it yet, but the whole thing kind of culminates in a party where Meryl and Steve, they show up high, and then Alec Baldwin also gets high, and then Alec and Meryl dance, and Lake Bell she kind of like realizes that based on how he's looking at Meryl, that he never really looks at her like that. So she decides to leave him. Then him still being in love with Meryl tries to keep pushing things there. And then while Meryl is Skyping with Steve one night, Alec sneaks in naked, which surprises everybody. And then just kind of from the sheer just being in that situation, they have to come clean to everybody, and that's when all the kids learn about it, and they make a whole to-do about sleeping in the same bed together because the divorce hit them all so hard. And I'm like, literally, get over it.
Oh,
sorry. That's just what I wrote. That's just what I wrote.
Yeah.
It was a decade ago. You've had so much time to move on.
Yeah.
I apologize. This is coming off very insensitive. But yeah, just kind of from that whole thing, Alec and Meryl realize that they should stop, and Meryl hopes things don't end with Steve, but they kind of do until they maybe don't. And the future of Meryl and Steve's relationship is left ambiguous. The end.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think compared to all of Nancy Meyer's movies that I've seen, this is gotta be my least favorite one.
Oh, yeah. This does not compare to, like, When Harry Met Sally is, like, top tier.
Well, I know When Harry Met Sally
status.
is, like, top tier, golden status, all that, but, like,
Yeah.
like I kind of just didn't like this movie. I thought it was kind of boring. Like I said, like, the part where I, in my description said, and then they just kind of go on dates and secretly hook up, that's about, like, 45 minutes of the movie.
That's fair.
And there's just not a lot of, like, story that feels like substantial story that feels like it's being built. It's just kind of like, hey, you know this situation of how everybody feels about each other now, and you've seen it, we've shown it to you, and then let's just kind of keep showing you that. Like, let's just kind of reinforce that, even though you already really know it.
Yeah.
And we're going to spend 45 minutes reinforcing that. And I just didn't need that.
That's fair.
So, yeah, I just kind of was like, there were parts of it that were funny, but in the end, like I said, like, I had no fun watching Alec Baldwin on the screen in this movie. He really was.
He's the worst part of this movie.
Like,
Truly.
if this was kind of supposed to be like a fun romantic comedy, or like, oh, this is a relatable thing, like maybe this happens to older couples, like when you get divorced, it's complicated, you know? But like, you can make that entertaining. And in this case, it was just like every time Alec Baldwin was talking to Meryl Streep, I was like, literally, like, get rid of this guy. Like, throw him in the trash. Like, I don't like him. Which just didn't make it fun to watch.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I think what I like about this movie is its simplicity. Like I said, it's a great background movie. It's a great, you got to do some laundry, put it on, type of movie. And I do really like John Krasinski in this movie, and I like Steven
for his like 4 speaking lines.
I know, but those 4 speaking lines are golden. And I really enjoy Steve Martin in this movie.
I do enjoy Steve Martin in this movie, and just in general.
Yeah, and maybe it's like the aesthetic of her house that is what makes me enjoy the movie. Yeah,
she had like the nicest house in the world in Santa Barbara, and it's like, hey, she owns a bakery.
I know, but her
that seems impossible.
I think her going through like the plans with like Steve Martin for like the rebuild and stuff. Something about this movie is kind of soothing to me, and it's like I'm able to ignore the Alec Baldwin parts and just like bask in the soothing aspect of it. I don't know. It's a weird thing. But yeah, I mean, this is not by any means one of my favorite rom-coms to exist, but I thought it was like kind of fun to see, and fun to see older people in a rom-com. And I feel like that was the like way they marketed it, of like,
that's
people,
a good point. Yeah. It definitely was like that.
Yeah, it was like, romance and like these kinds of stories happen to people who are indeed older, and so like, why can't they have a little movie,
That's fair. I just think it could have been done better.
Oh, 100%.
And I think maybe after this movie came out, people did do it better in other movies.
Yeah.
Another note on Alec Baldwin, he is like, he's mumble growling like Vin Diesel the whole movie.
That's his thing, though.
He's like whispering, but it's like a loud whisper. It's like, don't you know that we've got this thing to do.
But that's his thing. Like 30 Rock, that's all he does.
I didn't watch 30 Rock.
Oh, I really enjoyed 30 Rock.
Well, I was like, I got tired of it. And I like Alec Baldwin.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, I don't like not liking him so much in something.
Yeah. It's because he was such a trash dude in this that his voice made it even worse.
Yeah. Because it was, every word was manipulative.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
And also, Meryl Streep's friends in this movie, they sucked. They were like, yes, have the affair. I'm like, no. Like, as a friend, I am not supporting that behavior. Not because it's...
I don't know. I kind of thought it was like a fun scene for her to be like, yeah, I'm getting back at the woman that stole my husband by sleeping with my husband.
Okay, but I guess maybe it's like, oh, that's kind of fun. You know, they're supporting her having fun. But like, he's such a trash man.
Yeah,
why would you
sure.
why would you encourage your friend to be with such a
good
trash
point.
man?
No, you're right.
Like, no way.
He
My
did
friend
damage.
said that, I'd be like, you idiot.
Yeah.
Like
this is the
smart.
person that you couldn't get over 10 years ago, and now here you are, like, opening that Pandora's box again.
I'm like, he's literally
good point.
the worst. If my friends encouraged me to get back with my ex, like, I would literally have to stop being friends with them.
Well, her friends pretty much exit the movie after the first 30 minutes. It's like, that's their last scene.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, hit me with some other thoughts and facts and things, because that's kind of everything I had on this movie.
Yeah, I don't have many facts, but so like we said, this film was set in Santa Barbara. However, majority of it was filmed in New York, which I feel like is kind of wild. Not too many things are filmed in New York because it's just like seems so difficult to film things in New York.
Yeah, that seems weird because they weren't even in New York that much.
Yeah, so the exteriors of like her house, that footage is footage of a house in Thousand Oaks, California.
Yeah,
all of the interiors,
not quite Santa Barbara, but close.
Yeah, all the interiors were all shot in New York. I think on like a studio.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Hold on, I got locked out of my phone. So, Harrison Ford, Mel Gibson, Michael Douglas, and Tom Hanks were all considered to play Jake Adler, which is Alec Baldwin. I feel like none of those were good choices. Tom Hanks, I wouldn't want to
see Tom Hanks like this.
He's too sweet.
I think if this was the character, then yeah, Alec Baldwin was the right person for the job.
He was. He definitely was. Another fun fact. So there is a like college graduation scene that happens in the movie, and Meryl Streep reached out to her alma mater, Vassar College, to see if they could film that scene there, and they told her no.
Oh.
I know. And she serves on the board of trustees.
Wow.
And 2 of her children went to school there or go to school there.
I mean, hey, no free handouts.
That's crazy. But like, that's like to be able to film a tiny scene.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I don't know.
I would not want to be the person who says no to Meryl Streep.
No, I mean, right. I mean, like, it's Meryl Streep. Like, you're not supposed to say no.
You can film wherever you want.
Right. Like, oh, our college is going to be in your movie?
Right.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
Meryl Streep, yeah. That's good
crazy.
Publicity. What
Truly.
was the name of the college?
Vassar College?
Well, I've never even heard of it.
Should have had Meryl Streep film there. Okay. This is just a fun fact about Steve Martin and Alec Baldwin. So even though they never worked on a film together, both of them are tied for the most times hosting Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
With 14 times each.
Yeah. They are veterans.
Yeah. So I thought that was fun. But other than that, that's really all I've got. It's a pretty simple movie.
Nice.
Yep. All right. Shall we move on?
Ooh, yeah. Let's.
All right. I kind of wrote a long synopsis for this one.
Perfect.
But
worthy of how good of a film this is.
All right.
Let's hear it. I've been waiting all week to hear this.
I was assigned Godzilla Minus One, which came out in 2023. So this movie is set in the 40s and follows a kamikaze pilot named Koichi.
Koichi?
Koichi?
Wait, is that Soichi?
It's with a K.
Did you write it down?
Yeah.
All right. Now I got it. Now I got to look it up.
Koichi. I wasn't pronouncing
Koichi.
It.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I was thinking. Everybody just refers to him as Shikishima.
Got you. Well, I'm gonna refer to him as Koichi. So the movie follows a kamikaze pilot named Koichi who left his duties in the war and fled to a base camp with the excuse of technical issues. And I put that in quotations. So one evening while he's at this base camp, Godzilla shows up. And it's as abrupt as I'm describing it. Literally Godzilla just shows up.
That's a fair criticism.
So yeah, one evening Godzilla shows up and the mechanics on the base camp ask Koichi to stop Godzilla. I guess he has some sort of weapon attached to his plane that could
It's just a gun.
Yeah. Oh. That could. Well, they think
it's the 40s.
Yeah.
They don't know. It's a 10 millimeter gun can kill anything, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So they're like, oh, you can get Godzilla, and he's like, okay, but then he basically is terrified and kind of freezes, and this results in the casualties of pretty much all of the men except himself and one other mechanic, and that other mechanic is pissed. He's like, you did nothing, and all these men are dead because of you.
Yep.
So Koichi's pretty filled with shame. He just made an excuse to get out of the war, and he was supposed to be a kamikaze pilot, and he didn't do anything when Godzilla showed up.
Yep, ran away from his duty.
Exactly. So he's filled with shame, and he returns home to Tokyo, I think, and is basically really depressed. But he's being taken care of by this woman who is also taking care of an orphan baby, because a lot of people have lost parents in the war. So this woman's just taking care of him, and
the woman's name is Noriko.
Yeah, and in return, he's letting her live with him. And so Koichi is not only depressed, but he's experiencing some PTSD from his encounter with Godzilla. But he decides to take on a job getting rid of mines in the ocean. And so during one of his work days, he realizes that Godzilla is basically going to make its return. And spoiler alert, Godzilla does, causing even more casualties. So
wrecking havoc.
Wreaking havoc. I know. We listened to the old episode and I kept saying wrecking. Whatever. So after this catastrophic event where Godzilla has just messed up a bunch of people, a bunch of citizens, including Koichi and his coworkers, put together a plan to destroy Godzilla once and for all.
Sorry, you said citizens. Godzilla and his coworkers were trying to.
Godzilla and his coworkers.
Sorry,
I was Godzilla has coworkers.
Yeah, Godzilla's coworkers. No. Sorry. Koichi and his coworkers were trying to stop Godzilla in the ocean, and then a bunch of soldiers showed up, and Godzilla destroyed that. Yeah, I'm talking
ship. Past this.
Well, you skipped over that part,
well, yeah.
And then because
Godzilla came and created casualties.
Okay, he just created them. Yeah, Godzilla does come to the city of Ginza where Noriko is working because she's oh, let me get a job to kind of help around the place.
Yeah.
And so she's in Ginza, and then Godzilla's attacking Ginza, and then Koichi goes to Ginza to try and save her, but he is just he does his atomic breath, which is got the power of a freaking atomic bomb. And then what happens?
Casualties.
Including?
The girl.
Yeah, Noriko.
Well, I skipped over that.
Which is sad. It's a big emotional moment.
Yes, I was going to come back to it.
It's the emotional crux of the film.
I was going to come back to it.
I don't feel like you were, but all right.
I was, because I have a note. I have something that I thought about it.
Okay, go on.
Anyway, casualties, like I said.
Ooh.
So, at this point, a bunch of citizens, including Koichi and his coworkers, decide to come up with a plan to destroy Godzilla once and for all.
Okay.
So the plan, which I'll explain in detail later, it somewhat works, but then doesn't quite fully work. And so at the end of the day, Koichi kind of comes in on a plane and destroys Godzilla, and it's woo, he finally became a hero. He finally did something. Everyone's excited, woohoo. But at the very end of the movie, the puppies are whining.
That's okay.
They miss us.
They do miss us. They will be fine. We gotta wrap this up.
Yeah. But basically, like right before the movie ends, we see that maybe Godzilla isn't actually dead, and the movie stops.
Yeah.
So my thoughts on this movie.
What are your thoughts on this movie?
I didn't hate it.
Ooh.
But I did not like it. Or I didn't love it, I guess you should say. I don't know that I would say I liked it either. I don't think I liked it. But I didn't hate it. So I don't.
That's a win. That you went into it thinking you were gonna hate it.
Yeah.
That's a win. You hear that, Godzilla fans? We got her.
You didn't, but okay. So, and what you would like tell me about this movie, because you saw it a few times, you were very excited about it, you kept asking me if I wanted to come see it.
Yeah.
And you were like talking about how it's like this real emotional thing. Like you were like, it's not like what your sell to me on the movie was. It's not about Godzilla. Like it's about the emotional aspect of the people and what they're going through and all these things. And I didn't.
And I maintain that.
Yeah, I didn't feel any of that. I didn't feel the emotion that you came away with it. And like, I did not like the main character. I did not like Koichi.
Okay.
At all.
Let's get into it because hey, me neither.
So
did that mean I didn't like the film? No, not necessarily. Because Koichi is he's a coward. Like he's not like he starts out the movie with so much of himself needing to be redeemed.
Yeah.
And he knows it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the fact that you kind of like, you slowly watch him like bond with his coworkers, defeat, like destroying the mines and like struggling through his PTSD. He's like slowly kind of becoming just a better person throughout the movie.
Yeah.
Kind of like, like bonding with other people or like being a good influence on like the younger of his coworkers. And then and then like, but he's still kind of saying kind of stupid things to Noriko.
Yeah, I think that's why he really rubbed me the wrong way.
Well, yeah, and I think part of his attitude is due to like cultural and just like time period differences in how people used to think.
But like, I don't even want to give him that because everyone around him was like, "What are you doing?
Oh,
like, you're being
like
trashed."
He's and like and he was being trashed.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that he kind of was recognizing like, yeah, I am trash, and he's kind of getting this opportunity to not be trash, and then Noriko dies when he kind of realizes like, yeah, I do care about her. And then she just
had to die.
And then no. He realized that he cared about her. Then she died.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh my god. Like, and you see like he kind of shows like how upset he is when she dies, and it's like, oh my god, I just feel for the guy because like he's kind of a weenie, but he's been putting in the work to not be such a weenie. He's not quite there yet, but he's getting there. And now it just feels like, what's he going to do? You just can't help but feel bad for the guy. And
here's what I'll say.
He redeems himself by the end of the movie.
I feel bad because, like, I mean, going through a whole war and then facing Godzilla, like, that is a lot. So, like, I feel bad in the sense of, like, that's gotta have a huge impact on you.
Right. And I don't really want to call him a weenie too hard because he was supposed to be a kamikaze pilot. So he was supposed to commit suicide for the war effort, even though they knew like, we're not going to win this war. So what's the point in dying for nothing?
Yeah, the issue is the war, not him.
Well, see, that's a good point. The whole thing, even though it's a Godzilla movie, the whole thing is about like war and nuclear weapons and the impact that these things have on a society. Yeah. And it's not about like, oh, let's watch this big monster do his thing. It's about the people, and it's like it's a metaphor for the greater struggles of our real life through a cinematic lens.
Sure. Okay, I have a separate thought on that, but real quick on Koichi. You say he like put in the work, and I feel like I didn't see him put in the work. I feel like he just kind of like at the very end came to his senses and was like, oh, maybe I should like do something, and like that'll redeem me. And so like, I don't know. To me, it wasn't like a gradual development. It just felt so like last minute. We need you to like him at the end because he's gonna be our hero. So like, let's real quick like redeem him.
I think by the time before she died, I started to think this guy deserves to have a happy ending. Yeah. And then his happy ending was literally just snatched away from him. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, dang. And then for me, watching it kind of, my focus shifted away from specifically giving him a happy ending. Like, yeah, I hope he redeems himself. But I just kind of hope we get a happy ending for these people.
No, for sure. I cared a lot about his coworkers. Like, I was like, oh, I want them to be successful. Like, I don't want them hurt or anything like that. But yeah, I don't know. I just like was really having a hard time with Koichi.
And that's fair. Cause like I said, like I didn't love him either.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to come back to this point of like what the whole purpose of the movie is. And then I also want to say something about, what's her name? The woman? Noriko. So this whole, like, you gave this whole beautiful thing about like what the movie's actually about, the like war and like that being terrible and whatever, all of that stuff, which is like good message. I still could not get over the silliness of Godzilla. Like to me, I laughed when he popped up because he just looks so like silly. Like his head's so tiny, his body's like massive, his arms are little, and it's just like no matter how deep you try and make the rest, like the things around it, as soon as he pops up, it immediately takes me out of it because I'm like, this is so ridiculous. Like this monster looks so silly, and I can't like the way that he moves.
I don't know. So I did read facts about how they intentionally made him kind of like a more standing upright version of Godzilla, because there's all types of different forms of Godzilla. Yeah. But they specifically wanted to kind of make him a bit more of like an upright Godzilla to kind of pay homage to like the original Godzilla, which was like a man in a suit.
Yeah.
And that's just like how they designed it. And like, because this movie it takes place before even the original Godzilla took place in 1954. Mm-hmm. So like, I don't know, there's just been so many different renditions of Godzilla that when you've seen all of it, even like the really, really goofy stuff, when you see this and it's attached to like such an emotional story, you're kind of like, all right, I see it, you know, like I know there's like the super duper gritty, you know, current version of the American Godzilla franchise and the MonsterVerse that we have, which is by all means like he's never looked better. But and then we've got like the, you know, Japan, the source of Godzilla, you know, doing like their own kind of like this is like the most like authentic modern Godzilla. Because like the last Godzilla movie to come out was in Japan was Shin Godzilla in 2016, and you look at that version of Godzilla, and it's like it's a completely different monster. So this one is actually like much more kind of like paying respect to the origin of Godzilla.
Yeah,
and I didn't think he looked that goofy. I liked his little eyeballs.
He had like weird eyes.
This movie won an Oscar for Best Visual Effects, so you are objectively wrong.
It was not doing it for me.
I'm kidding. It was
not.
But no, I mean, like, I get where you're coming from. At the same time, like, when he's destroying Ginza and he uses his atomic breath, and it's like parts of his tail are like jutting out, and it like goes up his back, and then he like releases his breath, and it's like this massive explosion. I was like, that was for me the moment where I was like, oh my god, like this is terrible for these people.
Yeah.
And Godzilla, this is like a problem. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I don't want this for these people. Whereas when I'm watching one of the American ones, I'm just like, yeah, building is destroyed. No problem. Like, whatever. Who cares? But in this one, I was like, oh, crap. Like, people are going to die. Yeah. You know? I just like, even if Godzilla looked a little funny, to see all this destruction and feel like, oh no, like there's people that are gonna be killed from this, was in and of itself an accomplishment of a Godzilla film.
Yeah, I just have a hard time because like I said, to me he's just so silly that it's like, as much as I want to feel something from these scenes, I just like, I can't help but just focus on how silly he looks to me, like how and just how silly the whole thing is. So I don't know, I just really struggled with it. I get why people enjoy it, I just am not, it's not for me.
And that's okay. I'm glad you were open to watching it.
Yeah,
I'm glad you were open to just hearing what I have to say.
Yeah. So the next point I want to make,
go for it.
Noriko, I hated what they did with her character. I loved her as a character.
Okay.
I loved her a lot. I think she deserves way better than Koichi. But I really enjoyed her. And so in the movie, like we talked about, she dies in this like big scene with Godzilla.
Yeah.
Well, at the very end of the movie, after Koichi is successful with killing Godzilla and everyone's happy, this woman who was taking care of the little girl who Koichi and Noriko were like taking care of basically tells him like, yo, she's still alive. And they go to the hospital and she is still alive. And I hated that.
See, okay, I need you to tell me why you hated that, because literally when I saw that scene in a theater, I started to cry. I was like, oh my God, she's alive. No freaking way. Mm-hmm. Like I felt really emotional.
I did not. I hated it. And here's why I hated it. It's because like the end of the movie felt too good to be true. Like it was like too, in real life, things are, you have losses. Like you face consequences. Yeah. And like to me to have like, oh yay, we killed Godzilla. Oh yay, now the woman's alive. Like, oh yay, blah, blah, blah. I was like, no. Like there needs to be, I feel like it's much more powerful to like just sit in that loss. To be like,
and so that's the thing. I was fully prepared to sit in that loss. I had accepted like that she was dead, and I watched that whole part, like that from when she dies to when they kill Godzilla. I watched that whole thing. Like, yeah, she's dead. There's no other way around it. Yeah. Like I had accepted it, and I was upset about it. Yeah. And then, but then. At that point, I was just rooting for these people to be successful in taking down Godzilla, because like I said, you were just kind of like feeling for the Japanese people at that point, and because they'd been through so much, and they even made a point about talking about like, you know, issues with the country and like how, you know, the people were kind of the consequence of the war, and maybe, you know, maybe the people didn't even want to have to be a part of it, right? And so like you're just like, dang, like Noriko's dead, I'm feeling for these people, and then like the people are successful, and it's like your fist is in the air, like I'm so freaking happy for these people, but also I'm upset at the people that we lost along the way. And then suddenly it's like, well, wait a minute, she's alive. It was like it hit me it was like the perfect cocktail at the right moment. I understand what you're saying. Like, I think you do have a really good point. Yeah. But for me, just as a movie viewer, I was like, stop, no way. Like, she's alive. Oh my God. You know, like, oh. Yeah. What I didn't like about the ending was that they showed that, like.
Are you going to talk about Godzilla?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, you talk about it. Yeah.
That's another thing that I really didn't like about the movie as well. At the very, end of the movie, it shows like maybe Godzilla's not dead. Well, we already talked about that. So like, I don't know, he like was regenerating or something like that, and it was just like, I think the ending to me just like it just kept getting worse for me.
When they showed that Godzilla was regenerating at the end of the movie, that I think like that really undercut like everything else for me. It sounded like her being alive undercut everything for you, and then it was just worse for you seeing Godzilla was alive. But yeah, seeing Godzilla alive for me was like, ugh. Like I had been consciously thinking, watching the movie, like, how great is it that this is like an original take on Godzilla. This is a period piece film set in a time in Japan's history that we never get to see, and especially it's being told from a Japanese perspective. This is like a self-contained movie. It's a Godzilla movie. It's not trying to become like a big franchise or anything. It's just like focused on this big like franchise-worthy monster and keeping it all in one film, which is something that we would wish that like Marvel or Star Wars or whatever, that these big blockbuster franchises would do. And this movie did it, and I was like, oh, how great is that? And then at the end of the movie, it's like, oh, but then maybe there was a sequel. And I was like, oh, shut up. Like, I didn't need that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. I don't know. It just felt like once we got to the end, it was like, so we did all this for like what? Because like everything's just fine and dandy with this woman, and like Godzilla's not even dead. And it was just, I don't know, it just felt like, what was the reason? Like, what was the reason for what we saw leading up to this?
That's fair. And they also showed that like maybe Godzilla's cells like helped her stay alive, which was like a whole thing like on her neck, which like I didn't even notice that until the third time, and I'm glad I didn't notice it till the third time, because that as a plot point like sucks. I wish they didn't show that Godzilla was still alive, and I wish they didn't show that like she survived because of Godzilla cells. I think that's dumb.
Yeah.
If it was just like, and it turns out she's alive, I would have been happy. It sounds like for you would have been happy with her just staying dead, and they took him out, and hooray,
Yeah, I mean, like, if she just like was still dead, and then like he comes away from that experience being like, I'm gonna take everything that she told me and like live by that and just go on about my life, but like now he like gets her back. I don't know.
There might be like I'm a cis straight man, and there might just be something about like
you're just attracted to her.
No. Literally no. Not at all what I was gonna say. What I was gonna say, the experience of like, oh yeah, the female character, the love interest is alive, and I can kind of like put myself in the shoes of the main character a little bit more, of like, oh, if I thought you were dead and found out you were alive, and me watching the movie, I kind of, I spent that back half thinking like, oh man, here's this man like after he lost his love, and then suddenly she's alive at the end. It just really hit me, and it hit my buddy too.
But for me, it's complicated, where it's like, okay, you have this guy who's treating this woman so terribly, she goes away, you don't like, I don't know, stories like that where it's like, oh, but then they get her back. It's like, oh, like, it's just why? It's just like, no, like,
it's just different. It's just different.
No, I'm like, you don't get to get her back. Like, no.
Well,
you go on and you learn from that experience.
By the end of the movie, he really, I said like he had started to put in the work and then she died. Well, then he really put in the work after that. He went into full blown like montage. Let me get myself going in the right way mode, and then he did, and he got her back.
But that's what's like,
beautiful.
It took her death for him to like get himself together. Like, no. I'm sorry, but no.
All right. Agree to disagree.
But yeah, I mean, overall, I could see why this is probably the best Godzilla movie that has come out, at least in recent years. But yeah, I just like I felt like I was having a much different experience watching it than you did when you watched it. And I was just having a hard time connecting, having a hard time understanding why decisions were made, having a hard time empathize. Well, I don't want to say it. I sympathize with him. I couldn't necessarily empathize with him. And yeah, it was like really the only thing holding it together for me were the coworkers, and was like everyone else.
I did really like those coworker characters.
You said you did?
I did.
Yeah. Yeah, I really loved them. And I feel like had this been, if you had taken Godzilla out of this story, then maybe I would have liked it a little bit more. But having Godzilla in it just like, it really took me out of it. And I kind of struggled because I was just like, it's still a big dinosaur.
Yeah.
Like, to me, he looked like Bowser and Barney put together.
Oh,
and
dang.
then like a scary skin.
All right, let me paint you a picture of my first experience of watching this movie. I went and saw this like the Thursday night that it opened.
Yeah.
And I had no intention of seeing this movie. I was like, oh yeah, there's a new Godzilla movie out of Japan. I heard Shin Godzilla was actually like a pretty good movie. And like, I didn't know that there was a new Godzilla movie coming out. But then the like US based critics reviews came out on Rotten Tomatoes, and it had 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. I was like, what? That made no sense to me. So I got a ticket to go see the movie. I didn't even watch a trailer. I was like, I don't want to know. I just don't want to know. I went into this movie completely blind, just knowing like, hey, apparently it's pretty good. And then I watched it and was like, oh my God, you guys gotta go watch this movie. But I didn't think it was perfect, you know?
Yeah.
I think Godzilla showing up at the beginning of the movie is super abrupt. I think him still being alive at the end of the movie is super cheap. And I wish they didn't do it. So like I loved it. Was one of my favorite movies that I saw last year. But when I wrote my review for it, I was like, this isn't a perfect movie. Like I actually have genuine problems with it. But all of that said, like I was so surprised by how good everything else was, and which is why I gave it a 4.5 out of 5.
I mean, I totally understand why people really love it, especially people who like are more familiar with like the Godzilla series than I am. Because like,
but that's the thing, you don't even need to be familiar with Godzilla to enjoy this, because it is its own standalone thing. I mean, yeah, he shows up pretty abruptly at the beginning, but like I wrote that in my review too. Like you do need to have just some semblance of understanding of how Godzilla works.
Yeah, I mean, but like, no, what I mean by that is like, I think the people who like know about Godzilla and like the iterations of Godzilla really appreciate this because of that, like you said, emotional aspect to it. Like it's deeper than probably some of the other ones are. And so like I can understand why someone who knows a little bit about the Godzilla franchise would really, really appreciate this and really like this. And those who don't might also really like it. So, I mean, I understand the hype.
All right. Should I get into some facts?
Yeah.
All right. I had a bunch of them written down, and I don't want to read all of them.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, I know. You're looking at it. This is a long list. So I'm going to sift through some of these. All right. So the -1 in Godzilla Minus One refers to the fact that Japan, post-World War II, was brought to 0. So then, like, you know, they're at 0. They're at rock bottom. And then in this movie, Godzilla shows up, and it's like, well, dang, now we're less than 0. Now we're -1. Yeah. So that's why it's called Godzilla Minus One.
I was wondering.
Gareth Edwards directed Godzilla in 2014, the American one that kind of launched the whole MonsterVerse. He went and saw the movie, and he said he felt jealous, saying this is what a Godzilla movie should be like. Yeah,
I if I had made the American Godzillas, I would be like, I can't even go see it. It's gonna put me to shame.
Yep. Yamazaki, who's the director of the movie, his intent was to remain close to the themes of the original film. He said, I love the original Godzilla, and I felt I should stay true to that spirit, addressing the issues of war and nuclear weapons.
Love that.
Yep. The movie had a box office total of $25.3 million after its first week, making it the highest grossing Japanese live action movie in North American history. And that was just the U.S. domestic box office. Mm-hmm. And because it opened right around the same time as The Boy and the Heron, it was kind of like the first time that 2 Japanese movies reached the top 5 during the same weekend in North American box office history.
Nice. That's super cool.
Yeah. So like I said, it started out with 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and reviews were overall positive, but one review did criticize the lack of Godzilla screen time.
Oh no, it was enough.
And so when the first negative review came out, Yamazaki tweeted out saying, like, finally, he was happy that like somebody didn't like it.
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg said he was a big fan of this movie and saw it 3 times in a theater.
Wow.
Which Takashi Yamazaki, the director, basically said that was like being praised by God.
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Steven Spielberg, like king of movies. Yeah.
Not even monster movies.
I mean, movies in general, but like especially like monster movies.
I mean, name me some monster movies made by Steven Spielberg.
Didn't he do Jurassic Park?
Okay. All right, fair enough.
Touche. E.T.?
Is that a monster movie?
That's a monster movie. He's a little alien monster.
All in all,
I'm like, am I tripping? Did he not do Jurassic Park?
He did do Jurassic Park. You're right. I forgot about that. But I'm like, I do not think of Spielberg as a monster movie guy. I think of him as a movie guy. Granted, he did do Jaws. So
I'm like, for someone to like, his thing is like the spectacle of like a terror of something that's terrorizing people.
But then he did The Fabelmans, which was just all about loving movies.
Okay, well, obviously not all of his movies are.
That's what I'm saying.
But I think his most iconic ones are like Something Coming and like.
All right. I hear you, and we're gonna talk about that in sooner than you think. I'll get into that later.
Oh my gosh, are you assigning me E.T. because that would be so exciting?
No, I'm not assigning E.T.
I've been waiting on it.
You're supposed to give me The Breakfast Club whenever I do that.
I will.
We'll do it this summer. We're not doing it yet.
Okay.
So 35 VFX artists worked on this movie for 610 VFX shots. Avengers Endgame had 2,500 VFX shots as reference.
Gosh.
And a budget of $365 million. And this movie had a budget of like 1.5 billion yen, which is the equivalent of $10 million. Mm-hmm. So
I just want to put out there too. I know I kind of came for Godzilla and the way he looks and how silly it is. I mean, he looks good.
I think this is the
like
best.
All Godzilla's considering.
Personally, I think this is right now this version of Godzilla and the American version of Godzilla we have.
Yes.
These are the best looking Godzilla has ever looked.
Yes.
Ever.
Yes. I agree with that. I'm not coming for the people who worked on it because I think they did a fantastic
I like both versions of I like pink American Godzilla that we got right now.
Pink?
Oh yeah, he's pink now. Because you know how he's got like the blue aura of like the atomic breath and whatnot in this movie? Well, in the new American one, he's upgraded that to pink.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it's dope.
Oh my gosh. Well, keep going. I have to pee.
Okay. So yeah, they ended up winning an Oscar for best visual effects, and I think part of that has to do with like, the movie does look really good, but it's also the fact that it's like, they did it with 35 people and a $10 million budget.
Yeah,
I think that
amazing.
Definitely factored in.
Yeah.
And oh man, yeah. Some people thought like this movie was a little bit of a response to Oppenheimer, which like it wasn't. It wasn't.
I was like, those are two very different movies.
Was just like a coincidence that it was like, hey, we're kind of talking about like two different movies that are kind of dealing with like the impact of nuclear weapons in kind of two completely different cinematic ways.
I see.
But yeah, definitely some like thematic elements, and I think The director said, what did he say here? In some ways, the original 1954 Godzilla was created with that same backdrop in the wake of World War II, asking what it means for these superpowers to develop so many nuclear warheads. I think the fear and threat of it is certainly real, but the timely relevance of the thematic elements are quite striking. Yeah. Let's see what else we have here. Film is the first Godzilla film to be nominated for an Academy Award and win. It's also the first Japanese film and the first Asian film to be nominated and win in the Best Visual Effects category.
Wow.
I thought this was kind of interesting. They did not release the movie in China, Korea, Taiwan, and many other southeastern countries. They didn't put out an official statement, but many viewed it that Toho avoided releasing it to those countries because of possible animosity and lingering resentment towards Japan during, how they treated those countries in World War II, which would be exacerbated by the film's setting.
Yeah.
I'm using IMDb trivia as my source, by the way. Yeah. I say that because I kind of just read that one word for word. Makes sense.
Yeah. That would be a little, I don't know. What's the word I'm looking for?
In bad taste?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. The director was also the lead visual effects supervisor for the movie as well. So, yeah. So he was actually
involved in it all.
Yeah, he was the second person to win the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects for a film that he also directed.
Awesome.
The first person was Stanley Kubrick for 2001: A Space Odyssey. But Stanley Kubrick wasn't actually credited among the VFX artists team, so him winning that award was actually controversial at the time. But this is a very clear cut, guy directed it, also did the VFX.
Wow, talent.
Yep. Third highest grossing non-English language film at the domestic box office after Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon and Life is Beautiful.
Love that movie.
Let's see what else I have here. Oh, at the beginning of the movie, Godzilla bites down on some mechanics to kill them, but then he yeets them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He picks them up with his teeth and then just chucks them.
Yeah.
And based on our experiences with Jurassic Park, you'd think he'd be eating them. But apparently it was a big thing for Toho that Godzilla just cannot be depicted eating human beings.
Why?
It's just not a part of his character.
Wow.
He's not. I mean, yeah, he's a dinosaur.
He just comes to mess people up.
He's
I don't want you. I just want to mess you up.
He comes to destroy your buildings and blow things up, and then and then his friends will show up and he'll fight with them in the middle of your cities. He's like, hey, this seems like a good place to have a fight.
He's the worst. Wow, Godzilla trash.
Granted, this is the first. Sorry, this is the fifth Godzilla film where he does not fight another monster. The other four being Godzilla, 1954, The Return of Godzilla, 1984, Godzilla, 1998, that's the American one, and Shin Godzilla, 2016.
Yeah, I don't like when he fights other monsters. I'm like, y'all take that mess somewhere else.
I think it had more impact, the fact that it was him versus the people versus him
and a giant dinosaur or
versus
gorilla.
A gorilla, yeah. Or a robot.
Oh god.
Yeah, so he also only had 11 minutes of screen time, which meant he was in about 9% of the movie, which is 6 minutes less than he was in Shin Godzilla, and 2 minutes more than the original Godzilla, which was 9 minutes for 9% of its runtime.
Yeah, I feel like you don't need a lot of Godzilla screen time. I feel like what makes things scary is when you don't really see him. He's just kind of halfway out the water, and then you're like, oh, see, that's the thing. When he was halfway out the water, I was like, okay, I'm digging it.
Yeah.
And then when he was fully walking in the town, I was like, you lost me.
Oh, really? Because when he was fully walking in the town, I was like, ah!
No, because I feel like he moves so slow. But then when he breathes fire, it's super fast.
Yeah. Actually, like those scenes where he's walking through that town and it's like he is moving slow and it's kind of like you just kind of see things being chucked around and it's like there's reporters on top of a building being like,
what are y'all doing?
I know. That to me, I feel like it was that all of that sequence felt to me like it was trying to pay homage to just like classic Godzilla.
And that's why it's like, it gave off like silliness to me. That's why I like couldn't take it seriously because I'm like, he's moving so freaking slow, and like he looks like his head is just so tiny. I think it cracks me up.
I think it was an artistic indulgence.
Yeah. But like, as someone who's like not a fan of Godzilla, it's like I couldn't appreciate it in the way that others probably did.
That's fair.
I was just like, this is so silly.
That's fair. That's fair. All right, let's wrap things up.
Sounds good because I really have to pee.
Yeah.
Assignments.
No more on Godzilla.
Cool.
All right. So what are you gonna assign me this week, or do you want me to go first?
I can go first. I'm gonna assign you a movie I think you might really enjoy, and it's been a really long time since I've seen it, so I'm excited to watch it again.
And we should clarify something, that my dad is coming to stay with us in like tomorrow. Yeah. He's going to be with us all week.
Yeah.
So
he'll probably watch these two.
Yeah, and he'll probably watch these two. So we're kind of picking movies based on like
what he might enjoy.
What might be good for him as well.
Yeah. Okay. So,
and hey, maybe next week he'll be on the podcast. We don't know.
Pretty cool.
That'd be cool.
I'm going to assign you Enemy of the State, which is a
Will Smith?
Yeah, John Boyd and Will Smith.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. Never seen it.
Yeah.
Never seen it.
I saw it a long time ago, so
cool.
I'll be refreshing my own memory.
Nice. Okay. I was talking a lot about like, I want to give you this John Carpenter movie, and then I was like, oh wait, but then Godzilla became available, and then I was like, all right, well, I'll give you the John Carpenter movie the next week. But now it's like, oh, okay, you know what? This specific John Carpenter movie, I know my dad knows John Carpenter, but I don't think he would really enjoy this specific one all that much.
Gotcha.
So that'll be next week's pick. I promise. This week, we were talking about Steven Spielberg.
Ooh, but not E.T.
But not E.T.
Tears.
I am going to give you a little movie called Duel, which was made in 1971.
Never heard of that.
It is a pre-Jaws. Yeah, most people haven't. It is a pre-Jaws Steven Spielberg movie.
It's like set in the Jaws universe?
What? No. I'm saying
you just mean it came out before Jaws.
Yeah.
I was like, what do you mean pre-Jaws?
This is
There's a prequel?
No. This is pre-Jaws Spielberg.
Okay.
Which like Jaws was kind of the movie that put him on the map.
Right.
This is a pre-Jaws Spielberg.
All right.
1971 Duel. You'll see. You
were like, Steven Spielberg is on a monster
I know.
And like, lo and behold.
Then I kind of thought about it, and I was like, well, kind of has a point. You'll see when you watch the movie.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, cool. So we've got Duel and
Enemy of the State.
Awesome.
All right, look forward to that. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Content Swap Podcast, and we will catch you next week.
Godzilla fans, don't come for me.
And I'm going to go watch the Xbox thing. Bye.
Bye.